Hello, this is Mr. Wade going through Act 4, Scene 3 of Romeo and Juliet. I'm going to do this worksheet really fast. We'll start with the vocabulary. So in this scene, Juliet is trying to get herself alone in her bedroom so that she can take the potion and fake her death so that she doesn't have to marry Paris. But it's a pretty scary scene for her because she is about to embark on this adventure that is fraught with risk and uncertainty, and there's a lot at stake for her, and she's really terrified. But let's go through the vocabulary first, just so we can make sure that there's no strange words. So we're going to start with attires. Attire is clothing. An orison is a prayer. Cross is, I would say, what is cross? In this case, it is kind of guilty. Called is selected or chosen. Be hopeful would be useful. Dismal is, miserable. A vial is like a beaker or, a glass. Minister in this case is a verb. And what it means is to kind of alter. Lest means in case. Redeem means to fix, and ere means before. Conceit means plan. Festering means rotting. A shroud, as I've said before, is like a death shawl. Environed is surrounded. Joints are like limbs when she's talking about dead bodies in the crypt. Spit is to stab, but just think of almost like a shish kebab kind of stab, like when you spit someone, you stab them all the way through. You can almost lift them off the ground. A rapier is a fencing sword, so it would be the weapon of a gentleman in the Middle Ages. Something that you wouldn't necessarily use in battle, but you would use in a duel. All right, we're moving on very quickly to literary devices. So metonymy is a very weird literary device. The reason why I bring it up is because Shakespeare uses it all the time. So essentially with metonymy, what happens is it's a kind of metaphor that uses a word that refers to the container of the word that it's replacing. So an example would be the pen is mightier than the sword, for example. And I've used that many times before, but that's the easiest thing I can think of. So what you're doing is you're replacing pen. You're taking pen, and you're using it to replace the person who uses the pen. And you're taking the word sword and you're sticking it in place of the person who uses the sword. So you don't really mean the pen is mightier, because the pen isn't mighty. You're saying that the person who uses the pen is mightier than the person who uses the sword. So that's really what metonymy is. Shakespeare's full of metonymy. So I think this is kind of an example of metonymy. I'm not sure, but I think Juliet uses the expression orisons to move the heavens to smile upon my state. So in this case, the heavens is the container and God is the thing that's in the heavens. So when she says move the heavens, what she really means is move God who resides in the heavens. All right, so now we have personification. I think you guys know what personification is, but in case you don't, it's endowing an object with human qualities. It's another kind of metaphor. In this case, she's referring to a knife, as a person or a companion. Remember in the previous scene, or in the two scenes previously, she talks about the knife, her knife, as an umpire, a person that is going to help her out of the problem that she's in. It's a really, really grim image. But for Juliet, she really personifies this knife as this thing that's going to help her. So yeah, it's pretty intense. The vault whose foul mouth no healthsome air breathes in. So in this case, whoops, the vault is a person. So the vault or the tomb is a it's in some ways like a hungry person, and we're going to see that again later when Romeo visits the tomb. He's going to talk about the the person, like the vault, the mouth of the vault, as being hungry, and he's going to basically say, I am food for this hungry person. It's really really pretty grim. Okay, so there's a couple of other literary devices. One is a um, is the heat of life. In this case, the heat of life is really more of a metaphor, but I'll just put it down. The heat of a life is essentially the blood. A mandrake, that's kind of interesting. A mandrake is a magical plant, or rather, it's used for magic potions. I mean, nowadays we kind of speak about magic, like it's fun, but in the Middle Ages, I think it was generally believed by a lot of people. The weird thing about mandrakes was not that only that they were used for magic, but they screamed when they were pulled out of the ground, which is really amazing. I don't think such plants exist. I mean, you might find something almost as weird as that in some jungle, but yeah, mandrakes are like this mythical plant used for magical potions. When you pull it out of the ground, they scream. It's pretty amazing. The vault. Okay. Oh, geez. The vault is essentially what that is actually like an aristocratic family tomb. So these are large crypts, used to contain the bodies of family members, of dead family members, and it's just if you belong to a really wealthy family, then your family would have a vault. If your family wasn't wealthy, then if you were lucky, you could be buried in a patch of land, and all of your ancestors would be buried in that same area. And it would, because I think in it's very natural for people to long to see their dead family members, and so it's very natural for people to kind of hallow and revere the ground on which their ancestors and great grandparents and grandparents are buried. So the idea of a family vault makes sense. If a family in the Middle Ages had the money, they would buy a huge plot of land and put a gigantic building in it, and that building would house the bodies of their ancestors, and then people in the family could have comfort in that. Okay, so let's take a look at some metaphors. This is a really weird metaphor. It's actually a mixed metaphor. So let's take a look at it. Juliet refers to Tybalt, yet but green in earth. So I think the idea is that Tybalt is being compared to a what's the word? A fruit. So an unripe fruit is green. So Tybalt is kind of a newly harvested corpse, and therefore he's unripe, and therefore he's green in earth. So if putting a body in the earth is to harvest the body, then Tybalt has only been in the earth for a short time, and therefore he's unripe. So what a ripened corpse would look like, I don't even want to imagine. But Tybalt he's green in earth because he's only been planted there very recently. It's a really weird metaphor when you think of, like plucking a fruit from the tree is kind of almost like the opposite of putting something in the ground, but that's kind of what what Shakespeare is implying. So the other thing is the burial equals the harvest, which is really grim. The idea of, like putting, like when somebody dies, they're new fruit. Pretty amazing and an interesting metaphor. Okay, the next thing is, these are really simple, almost too simple. An apostrophe is when the character speaks to someone who isn't there in a soliloquy. So lie thou there. She's speaking to a knife, and in this case, um, very often, um, the person who is doing the apostrophe is personifying an object. Not always, but sometimes. Um, so in this case, she's personifying a knife, and when she says "come vial," she's speaking to a vial. That's kind of obvious. And in the other two cases, she's obviously talking to the ghost of Tybalt, except that the ghost of Tybalt isn't really there. She's imagining that she sees the ghost of Tybalt, but it's not really. It's almost like a it's sort of a delusion, and Juliet is really intensely, she's feeling very strong feelings in this scene. Tybalt is not really there. He's absent, so I think we can sort of see that. We can sort of imagine that um, he's she's kind of delusional. And finally, she says, "Romeo, I come. This do I drink to thee." Absent Romeo is really the person who's being personified. Like Romeo isn't there, and that's what a personification, or that's what an apostrophe is. It's when you speak to someone that isn't there. So it creates a kind of a dramatic moment. And finally, let's get to the questions. So some of these questions I think are pretty easy. Why does Juliet want to, why is she so eager to get them out of the chamber? She has to, in order to take the potion, right? And, she must do this alone. And this is very, very hard for her. She realizes that these are the only two people that have really been anything like a companion to her, and now she has to do it alone. Romeo's far away in Mantua. The priest isn't there. This is something she's got to do by herself. It's really, really intense. How does she manage to get them to leave? She tells them she's fine, for one thing. She reminds them they are busy with other things. You've got your hands full. You must have a lot of other stuff to do. And then she says she has to pray to ask for forgiveness. And this is really important, and it's kind of true in a way. Okay, so the next scene. Well, she doesn't have to pray necessarily for forgiveness, but she's definitely in a mood to receive some divine assistance, because this is a really, really scary moment for her. Okay, the next question. Explain Juliet's last comment to her mother. Farewell. God knows when she'll meet again. What might this suggest about her feelings at this time towards her mother? Okay, so it's very interesting. A lot of Shakespeare's meaning is not necessarily only in what is in the text, but is what is not being said. So it sort of implies that Juliet loves her mother and might, misses her mother. She's speaking in some ways to a mother that she wishes that she had. She's yearning for a mother that she wishes she had. I think it's pretty obvious that her real relationship with her mother is deficient, and even likely one of the reasons why Juliet is in her current situation. mean, she's very much alone, and it's pretty obvious that her mother herself, Lady Capulet, is not very nurturing. She thinks of Juliet as, um, you know, is sort of a ticket to Paris's family, that kind of thing. She thinks she wants her daughter to get married off soon. I mean, Lady Capulet is even less nurturing and loving than old Capulet in a way. Like, at least old Capulet at the beginning of the play, he has a moment where he wants to nurture and take care of his daughter. He says, like, I don't want my daughter to leave yet. She's the only one I have left, back in Act 1, Scene 2. But we don't ever get a sense of that with Lady Capulet. Like, she's all business. When she's not taking care of business, she's governed by, revenge. When she's not cold and calculating, she's demanding Romeo's death. So she's a very cold lady. And it sort of implies to me that Juliet is speaking to somebody that isn't there, and somebody whom she wishes was there. Okay, let's take a look at the next question. Explain and summarize Juliet's fear concerning drinking the sleeping potion. What can go wrong? Okay, so I kind of summarized this. So question D has several parts to it. The first part: what would happen if the potion did not work at all? How would she protect herself? What does this tell us about her feelings? So if the potion doesn't work, what would happen? She would have to marry Paris, because she would wake up the next day. So she would protect herself by committing suicide. And that's kind of, she just states that as sort of a very clear fact. She says, this shall prevent it, lie thou there. She's speaking to her knife, so she just deals with that in one line. And she's pretty resolute about that, no question. Another thing that she thinks about is maybe that the friar may be using this as an excuse to kill her. So she has no protection. She realizes that if this potion is actually a poison, then she's dead. However, she believes the friar is a good man. That's kind of interesting. She just, because everyone trusts him. And this is, I don't think that the friar is a bad man, but this is sort of a given. Like, the whole community believes in the friar. The whole community trusts him. It's just unthinkable that the friar would do anything wrong. We've still known him to be a holy man. I think those are her lines. Okay, another possibility is that Juliet. Okay. I think I just gave the answer to this one over here. So I'm just gonna, just very awkwardly put this answer here. The question is, why does Juliet decide to trust the friar, even though she admits that he could be trying to kill her? Because the friar is a good man, and everyone trusts him. The whole community trusts him. I realize I didn't answer number 2 properly yet. What reason does Juliet give for the possibility that the friar may be using it? Because the marriage of Romeo and Juliet is potentially embarrassing for the friar, right? And he could use, kill Juliet and make it look like suicide, and then to escape his situation. This would be the easy way out for him, to convince this girl to commit suicide so that he doesn't have to explain it. But she dismisses that because like that is really a cold, nasty thing to do. Like, maybe some other horrible person could think of that. Maybe someone like, I don't know, like Richard III or some, Iago or Macbeth or some really, or Lady Macbeth, right? Maybe even Lady Capulet would do that, but not the friar. The friar is like too good a man. Juliet and everybody else trusts him. Question: what happens if she wakes up before Romeo comes to rescue her? Okay, so I even broke this down. What would happen to her body? She would suffocate, which is a terrible way to die. She's really scared about that. To her mind, she might go crazy. Why? Because she's surrounded by corpses. Not just any corpses, but corpses of her own family. So, visions of, like zombie, not that their family corpses would come to life or anything, but it's just really horrible to be surrounded by, you know, like corpses, especially corpses of people that you know. Like, and at some point she talks about Tybalt's corpse, she would see Tybalt's dead body. And that's pretty intense. Okay, I think I just lost the rest of this. So, okay. What supernatural danger does she fear in the tomb? Um, it's in the back of her mind that there may be ghosts here. And okay, I think I might have lost the rest of my questions here. Oh dear. Uh, did I lose my questions? Huh. Yeah, I guess that's the end of my questions. Okay, so that's it. And I'm gonna just I'll just stop there, and I'm gonna do scene 4 in a minute. So hopefully you guys are able to follow along. And thank you very much.